Although we know it as an ancient, this must have been back in the day. The very rocks the Prophet must have. A nice limbu pani. You get there. Where the Prophet spent many. These are the very stones where the Prophet laid his hands. Clock tower, just over there. Right, I'm heading towards the Jabal Noor, the Ghar of Hira, where the revelation was revealed to the Prophet. So I'm going to head over there and going to attempt to climb this in quite. They say it takes 2 to 3 hours. I don't have 2 to 3 hours to climb. I'm going to try and do it in an hour. My fitness, well, we'll get there and let's see how it goes. Just taking in the sights of Mecca here whilst going to the Jabal Noor. You can see the construction work going on and you can see the mountains. Of course, the mountain where the aged fort was has now been removed, and the aged fort itself and the clock tower has been put there. But once hopefully we get to the top of Jabal Noor and into the cave, or just at the top, we'll hopefully be able to see Mecca in its hilly sort of the horizon of Mecca, and we'll be able to see these tower blocks and everything. Back in the day, before this tower which was erected post 2002, you could see from Ghar Hira the Kaaba. So if you looked straight from the Ghar Hira, from Jabal Noor, you could see the Kaaba. Of course, nowadays, because of all these high-rise buildings, there's absolutely no chance of seeing the Kaaba. But before, there used to be a focus. The focus used to be the Kaaba, the center of attention. I'm all for building modern buildings, and rather than, because there used to be slums almost, some of these buildings, and it was difficult for the Hujjaj, and the increasing numbers, the burgeoning populations all demand modern facilities, modern means, and but there's a way, I think, maybe somehow in a very, very clever form of urban planning, possibly to have had the buildings in such a way that you could still the eye could pierce through from far away and see the Kaaba. But yeah, it would require some very, very meticulous planning. But this is Mecca now. So this is the Utaybiyah district, and yeah, we're heading towards the Jabal Noor. I've just stopped off on my way to Jabal Noor at the Jannat al-Mu'alla, and here we have the wife of the Prophet, al-Mu'mineen, Sayyidah Khadija bint Khuwaylid alayha salam, buried. We also have the great supporter of the Prophet, Abu Talib radiyallahu anhu alayhi salam. We also have Abdul Muttalib. We also have Qasim, the son of the Prophet, buried here. So let's have a look. Got the mountain over there, and that's also Jannat al-Mu'alla over there. As you can see, in typical fashion, the graves are all unmarked. We don't know who is buried where, but the grave of Sayyidah Khadija radiyallahu anhu alayha salam is buried here, is here. And we know how such a great station, and we're going to be going to Jabal Noor, and Sayyidah Khadija, you would bring food up that mountain to feed the Prophet, and whilst he was contemplating and meditating there. And that's quite amazing, because that mountain at the moment has steps. Prior, it did not have steps, and it's a fair climb. And that's the graveyard there. So Sayyidah Khadija alayha salam, al-Mu'mineen, was the foremost believer in the Prophet, the first person he confided in and he resorted to when the revelation from Jabal Noor came to the Prophet. He ran down the mountainside, and she went and she gave him consolation. She consoled him. She gave him the confidence that he needed at that very moment when he was in a state of astonishment, in a state of pressure and anxiety, in the sense that he'd just seen this vision. Of course, he was a prophet from before, and his body, but it was the natural physical effect of the wahi, the first impact of the wahi. And she supported him with his wealth. And when she passed, along with Abu Talib, the Prophet named the whole year as Amul Huzn, the year of sorrow, because these individuals were the backbone of Islam in its very earliest days. And Abu Talib, who is considered by many as a person who did not believe, um, must have believed, and he did believe. He was a grand personality of Islam and an individual who will be rewarded immensely. He is the father of Ali ibn Abi Talib, and the grandfather of the Ahlul Bayt alayhum salam. And he has a very, very high rank in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum ya Ahl al-Qubur. We have Masjid al-Jinn just coming up, and it's amongst a few hotels, and this is where there was a party of jinn where the Prophet recited the Quran, and apparently they became Muslim. And we have a whole verse in the Quran known as Surah al-Jinn. So that is Masjid al-Jinn. So this is close to Bab al-Salam, where Safa and Marwa end, and this is that part of the Haram from where we're exiting now and going towards Jabal Noor. As you can see, it's no sort of ancient city, although we know it as an ancient city, but it's very, very modern also. The highways, the skyscrapers, the facilities. That's where we're heading to. That is Hira, right on top of that mountain. It's quite a high peak. There is the Mount of Jabal Noor, which is 1750 steps you need to walk up, 640 meters high, 2,100 feet. And the Prophet would spend a lot of time here, especially after the 6 months of dreams he had. And when the stones of Makkah would do salam to him, he went and did tahannuf or tahannuf. And even the word may be derived from Hebrew, meaning tahniyat, private prayers, which was a pre-Islamic practice of moving away from paganism and taking a route of seclusion. And he would be secluded for months almost sometimes. He would almost be there for a month where he would be secluded from everybody. And he would then come back, and prior to getting back to his family, he would do the tawaf of the Kaaba. And Sayyidah Khadija would come, and she would give him food and climb this mountain, give him food and come back. And he would take enough provision, food and water, and stay up here. And then coming back, he would, or going up, he would feed other people who would be nearby and wanted provisions. So we're going to try and go up. There's people you can see going up there. There's people all over the mountain there. So we need to somehow reach right there, inshallah, and see the sunset. People, it's not integral to the Hajj, but it's part of spiritual exercise, the history of Islam, part of the Siratul Nabawiyyah. So just reached and going to try and get up there. And the Prophet was a great climber. He must have been very, very fit, because there were no steps in his time. And the mountain of Thabira is a slippery mountain. It's even more the angles on it, and the Prophet would had climbed that even. Heading up now. You could get off earlier and walk up. It's quite steep. You could feel the steepness. There's still a lot of people here. And but try and picture how this must have been back in the day. We're going up and totally isolated, no houses, extremely lonely, extremely lonely. I mean, you might even have wild animals and things. The very rocks the Prophet must have touched and walked. And this is one of those few places you know exactly that the Prophet was exactly in that location. Ghar Hira, the very exact location. So I'm going to get up there hopefully. Not stopped off at the shop to buy myself some food and drinks, as that's going to be needed, but I'm sure there'll be some nearby. So I'm trying to get right to the base of the mountain. It's nice of the driver to be taking me that far because, you know, it's still a fair walk to get to the base, and you can just get tired getting to the base of the mountain and before you've even begun the ascent. The Prophet was very fond of seclusion, and before the wahi he would come here, and after revelation, because he became a man of the people and needed to organize society and change society, he still enjoyed the muraqabah and that self-accounting and contemplation with God. And he would do i'tiqaf on the last 10 nights in Ramadan in Masjidun Nabi. A nice limbu pani by my dear brother. So I think that's really necessary. Forgotten sunnah of the Prophet to do muraqabah, silence, contemplation and meditation on the names of God and creation and the realm of the soul. Beyond rituals and other practices, this is a deep, deep rooted sunnah of the Anbiya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The azan is going on now. Steps to climb up. At the time of the Prophet, there were no steps, and just look how slippery that is to get there. Right, finally reached the summit here, Jabal Noor, and it's time for prayer. I'm going to pray and I'll show you around and try and get into the actual cave. Woo! If ever there was a place to pray, it's got to be this. Subhanallah. I'm just about to say my prayer, and that's the night sky, and that's Makkah. Clock tower is just over there. Haram. Right, we're just approaching the cave, and there's quite a crowd here. It's gone past Maghrib time. It's dark. There's no lighting up here because the Saudi authorities don't put any lighting. They've made steps, which is useful, and they've put. I can imagine the steps weren't there, several decades ago. And there's a railing, but I wouldn't go too far close to it. And there's quite a crowd up here, so you need to queue up to get into the actual ghar, the actual cave. So we're gonna see. I think the grave is the ghar is further down, so we can see lights, we can see people, but the silence here would be eerie and quiet when the Prophet's era, and that's what we need sometimes. We're in a drone of noise all the time. We live in a society where you need to make yourself heard, you need to speak loud, but the power of silence, the power to be able to connect with the inner being. And eternally God dwelt in silence, as they say. Find silence and you will find the divine. It is in silence that the divine mysteries are revealed. And no doubt that in this mountain, it must have been the most surreal sensation. Take all the modernity away, phones, buildings, lights, electricity, engineering tools, or everything, and bring it back to the bare essentials. Just you and that heart, which is an untainted heart, which began with the very first individual when God breathed his spirit into it. That heart has never changed, and it is always connected to the divine. But we let it slip, we let it become rusty, and we forget God. Now the steps here are quite dangerous. You have to go further down and on a sort of semicircle, and then descend the mountain to a certain extent to reach the actual cave. So here I am. There's women, there's old people. I'm so surprised with the amount of people out here at this time. There's old people, there's a lot of women, and some of them, a lot of them aren't athletes by any stretch of the imagination, and they're heading downwards as well. So I'm going to switch this phone off and try and get to the bottom. So Sayyidah Khadija would come 3 occasions a day to deliver food and supplies to the Prophet who would be here. And from here, he would be able to see the Kaaba. Right now, you can't because the tower is over there, but you could see the Kaaba. And from here, she would be able to come up and see the Prophet. Now there's steps. I'm amazed by the stamina and the health of the Prophet to reach this place. He must have been a man of great stamina, as would everyone, because the foods they ate were wholesome, pure, free from contaminants, free from being processed. The modern diet is full of negative energy. It is full of processed foods, sugars, and other things which lead to health detriment. And one of the great sunnahs of the Prophet is to walk, to exercise. And this sort of exercise is at the same time a spiritual work. And you see, like in the Far East, the martial arts and disciplines which are very much oriented towards disciplining the body, the soul, the spirit, the lower self. And the same thing is here. Any exercise we do, anything we do, must have a spiritual component. Everything must be animated by spirit, by being conscious and cognition of the transcendent and the divine. These are the very stones that the beloved put his hands on. These are the very place where the Prophet contemplated. And at one particular moment, the Prophet saw a light across the heavens, and he saw the horizon full of this light. And it was none other than Jibreel al-Amin, the Archangel Gabriel that came to the prophets before him, Isa, Musa, Ibrahim, and all the other prophets. And the angel said, read. And the Prophet said, Ma ana biqari. Ma ana biqari. On 3 occasions he was asked to read. But he said, no, I can't read. And then the angel said, recite, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. यार बाहर भी इसी रास्ते से आना है यार, ये मुझे पकड़ ले ना, ऊपर है, फोन पकड़े
एक टांग इधर से आराम से नीचे से लेके आए,
तक हो जाए
ऐसे बस थोड़ा टांग इसके अंदर से लेके आए।
अच्छा, अल्लाह अकबर,
वो
शुक्रिया।
ये पीछे को आवाज दे दे, अभी उन्हें बोला आगे बहुत रश है, जगह नहीं आगे।
I nearly just got stuck in there. You need to really move. And then when Jibreel came to the Prophet, he says, Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. خلق الإنسان من علق اقرأ وربك الأكرم. He recited these 5 verses of Surah Al-Alaq. And when the Prophet heard these verses, he felt this degree of stress and pressure on his chest. And the Prophet then ran down the mountain. And God knows how he ran down the mountain, because walking down this mountain is very dangerous. But running, he ran down the mountain, and he came and he was consoled by Khadija, who gave him. Look at the state of this. This is the cave where the Prophet would come in isolation. Look at, it's just crowded. There's no way of getting in there. There's so many people. There's a massive queue. There's women there, and the smallest of gaps to get through to get to this cave. It was in this very place that the Prophet, at the age of 40 in lunar month and 39 in solar, came and he received the revelation. It was during Ramadan that the Prophet, at the age of 40, received the revelation, the 21st or the 27th of Ramadan, the Laylatul Qadr, when the first revelation was given to the Prophet. So this is the ghar. This is where people pray, and this is where the Prophet spent his time, and the wahi was revealed. This is where the Prophet spent a month sometimes, and he would then leave just this small little space in here. This is the very stone where the Habib put his hands. This is the very place where the Habib would contemplate. And these are the very place, this stone has not changed. Everywhere else you go, you put your feet, it's marble tiles. But this is the same stone, the same place where the beloved of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala touched and sat, and you can feel, and this is where the true barakah is. This is where it all started. Ghar Hira. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma ij'al mahyaya Muhammadin wa ali wa mamatana mamat Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. يا رسول الله انظر إلى حالنا واسمع قالنا.
If you are praying, please recite small surah. If you are praying, please recite small surah.
This is the cave where the light of God manifested, where the angel Jibreel came, where the Prophet spent many. These are the very stones where the Prophet laid his hands, where he sat. He probably sat on that stone. This is that very spot. Subhanallah. Iqra, the very first words. Bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq.
ये वो पहाड़ है जहाँ पे हज़रत जिब्राइल अलैहिस्सलाम ने हज़रत अला मुहम्मद कमा बारक अला इब्राहीम व अला आलि इब्राहीम इन्नका हमीदुम मजीद।
So here we are on the top of the mountain. We're viewing all of Makkah from here. Can you imagine this? How it would be without these lights, without any person here the solitude, the quiet, the tranquility. And there's people trying to get in that cave there. The cave's just there. Pray nothing. There's a musalla in there. You can climb further up on the mountain. It's like a hump-shaped mountain. It's like a camel shape. And this is the city of Makkah. The clock tower is just on that side. So back in the time of the Prophet, you could see the Kaaba through
भाई तुम्हारा वजन ज्यादा मैंने
These are the very stones, the very rocks that the Prophet touched and kissed and sat on. Amazing place. It would be even more amazing if there was nobody here and you could experience life and experience the sense of quietude the Prophet experienced. That's the clock tower just over there. Right, exiting from here, you've got a very tight spot, so you need to really sort of go upwards, and then you need to duck underneath. And this is the way out from this cave. This is the way out from here. And the view from here. That's the view of the city of Makkah coming out. There's the clock tower, and that's where the Kaaba is. Very, very peaceful. You could spend all night here and pray until your Fajr prayer. I can now understand why the Prophet spent so much time above here. The city of Mecca was just exactly where that clock tower is, and it was about that size only. So this is outside Mecca. This is not inside Mecca. Mecca was a very, very small city, the ancient city, and that's where the Kaaba was, and the Prophet would come here. This is a path the Prophet would take, coming back down. Utter pin drop silence. That's what he would have experienced It's just astounding and bewildering to just think even of how the revelation came to the Prophet. The first impact of revelation must have been an absolute shock and awe-inspiring moment